Hi everyone, this is Professor Ivezai, and welcome to a lesson in Communication Studies. The purpose of this video is to introduce you to the world of public speaking. First, we're going to talk about where the study of communication came from. Then we're going to talk about the process of writing a speech. And finally, we will go over a little baby abridged version of the components of a speech. So let's begin. So first off, why do we study communication in the first place? What's the point of studying a thing that we do all the time? Like, do we really need to learn about communication when everybody communicates? And the answer is that's precisely why we need to study it. Everybody communicates all the time. Whether we are trying to or not, we're always communicating. But just because we communicate all the time doesn't mean we do it well. For instance, think about a time where there was a misunderstanding or a miscommunication between you and someone else. Or maybe someone misinterpreted what you were trying to say. Or maybe someone was telling you something and you had no clue what they were saying. You were trying so hard to understand and it could not make sense to you. Those problems might come down to ineffective communication. Communication is a skill, meaning that if we want to improve on it, we need to practice. So what better way to improve your communication skills than by taking a class in communication? So where does this study of communication come from? If we look at our historical records of the earliest civilizations in ancient Mesopotamia, we have evidence of public speaking and rituals and ceremonies. Speaking is something that has been important in human cultures all around the world. The formal study of communication that you'll find in colleges tends to come from ancient Greece. It originates there. And the reason why is because ancient Greece, specifically Athens, had a unique situation which led to a very specific focus on public speaking and persuasion. So in Athens, they had a democratic society where people would vote, people would propose policies. So it was imperative that you would be a good speaker. You needed to prove that you were a trustworthy person that people should listen to. You needed to be able to talk about why the thing that you wanted was important and that people should vote for it. And if there were people who were against you, you needed to be able to specify why you think that other person was wrong and why you think your position is stronger. So being good at persuasive speaking was a key part of being a member of society at that time. So what happened during that time was a group of people called the Sophists were trainers. They were teachers of communication. Think of them as an ancient Greek version of me. Only a man, because I don't think I would be able to teach. The Sophists would train people in communication skills. It became common practice to have someone teach you how to be a good speaker, that there were skills involved, that there were certain strategies that you could use. It is an aspect of public speaking that has heavily affected Western society. It shapes the way that we consider a good speaker to be. Even though that was long ago, we still have an audience. We still want them to believe us and we want them to like us. We still want to be credible and use evidence when we're speaking. We still want to advocate for change. That has not changed at all. So let's talk more about what that looks like. As communication scholars, we have attempted to try to describe what is happening in the process of communication. So this is through the communication model. Let's take a closer look at this model and see what it's all about. This is the communication model. I am going to be giving you a very simple version of it. If you want a more detailed explanation, please read chapter 1. So on the left side of the graph, we can see the speaker. On the right side is the audience. And on the top in that purple box is a message. What happens is that the speaker has some sort of idea that they want to convey to the audience. They use their experience, their world of knowledge to create a message. And they send that message to the audience through a channel. Channel just refers to how it's being transmitted. This can be face-to-face, it can be over the phone. In this case, it's through a YouTube video. So once the receiver gets that message, they then make sense of it. They decode it. They get the message, they unpack it, and they do their best to understand what was just told to them. On the bottom of the graph, you'll see that it's a loop. The audience member reacts to the message. They send feedback. In a conversation, it might be the form of a question. In a speech, the audience members might nod, they might smile, they might applaud you, and that feedback is giving some sort of message to the speaker for them to interpret and make sense of. It is difficult to take the human behavior of communication and try to condense it into one visual graphic. There is a lot of things going on this chart because communication is a complex process. One of the things that makes communication difficult is that we all, as individuals, have different experiences in life, and that shapes our perceptions of the world. The speaker's understanding of a topic might be very different from the receiver or the audience's understanding of a topic. It can cause confusion and misunderstanding when the understanding of the world that the speaker has is different from the perceptions and context that the audience has. Let me share with you an example of how being an effective communicator might change the way an audience perceives a message. Keep in mind that communication is a complex process and that this model is a simplification. It's an attempt to try to describe what is going on when we are communicating to an audience. So I was having a conversation with a friend, and this friend of mine told me that he collects guitars. So he is the sender. He has that message in his head. I have a guitar collection. He sends that message to me. I receive this message, and then I interpret the message. So he tells me I have guitars, I collect guitars, and I go, cool, noted, got it. So now that I've received this information, I've interpreted it. And I'm imagining that my friend has a room full of guitars that look something like this. And why did I think this? When I hear guitar, I think acoustic guitar. Also, I had some other factors in my lived experience that affected how I interpreted his message. So I knew that this friend of mine is from Texas. And in my experience of Texas, I've never been there, but I've watched King of the Hill, and Hank Hill plays the guitar, the acoustic guitar, and he loves his acoustic guitar. So in my perception as an audience member to his message, as the receiver to the message, I thought, yeah, that makes sense. You're from Texas. You must have a whole bunch of guitars. You must play country music. Makes total sense. And then he showed me a picture of his guitar collection, and it looked like this. And I was shook. I was completely shook. I had no idea that by the word guitar, he meant electric guitar. And there was no way I would have imagined that it would be purple and sparkly. Like, the word guitar did not register that image for me. So what happened here in our communication? He had an idea of what was in his head. He envisioned a guitar to look like this, and he called it a guitar. I received that message, and using my lived experiences, also known as my stereotypes of Texan people, I interpreted that as an acoustic guitar. So how can we make our communication more effective? We want to be very deliberate with our language and our word choices. By being an effective public speaker, you are planning and preparing your message. You're being cognizant of what words you're choosing, of the language that you're using. That way you're making your message as clear as possible for your audience member. So how could that miscommunication have been avoided? As a speaker, it's using more specific language. We don't know each of our audience members' lived experiences. We don't know what's going on in their heads, what their interpretation of things are. So if we can be more specific, we're leaving that guesswork out. We are telling them exactly what we mean, being as specific as possible, and not leaving them guessing, trying to fill in the blanks. I'm going to give you another example of why language choice is important in trying to convey a message to our audience. So I'm going to tell you right now, I have a dog. And I want you to right now imagine what this dog looks like. chances are that every one of you who watches this video has a different image of a dog in your head. Maybe it's your dog, maybe it's a dog you saw on Instagram or something. The word dog signifies a lot of different things. It's not very specific. What if instead I had more specific language in trying to convey this message to you? So I might say something like, I have a puppy. He's a dachshund. He has black fur with little brown details on the front of his eyebrows and around his snout and on his paws. And he has a really cute snout and he has a really long tongue. And he likes to stick his tongue out and he's got floppy ears. Do you have more of a mental image now of what my puppy looks like? Does it look something like this? Maybe you're a little closer. Maybe the image that you had in your head is closer to the image in my head. And also, I hate to break it to you, I found this picture on Google. It's not my dog. I don't have a dog. I know. I wish I had one. Oh, this picture is making me upset. I wish that was my puppy. So you can see how by being very specific and deliberate in your language choices, you're able to use that communication model to limit uncertainty, to really make your message clear. In normal communication, we have the option to pause someone, to ask questions, to go back and forth. But when you're giving a speech, there's not a lot of back and forth going on. For the most part, when you're delivering a speech, you are sending that message to the audience and they're not really saying anything back to you. So since they can't ask you to clarify anything during the speech, you want to be specific with your word choice. And this is something that's important for public speaking, but think about that in your everyday life. How can you make your messages more clear? How can you be more confident in what you're saying by using specific language choices? The next thing we're going to talk about is the process of writing a speech. We tend to think that public speaking happens right in the moment, that every speech is something that happens at the stage, at the podium, where the speaker is really charismatic and dynamic with their audience. The truth is that there is so much that goes into preparing a speech before you even get in front of an audience. Right now, we're going to go over the process of preparing a speech. Let's talk about the different steps of preparing a speech, starting with analyzing the audience. Like I mentioned earlier, getting the message to the audience is a crucial part of delivering a speech. If we're delivering a speech without an audience, it would be private speaking, not public speaking. So we need to think about who our audience is. In any speaking situation that you're given, there's going to be an audience. If you're trying to inform them, you want the information that you're delivering to be accessible to them. When it comes to persuasion, we want to pay careful attention to who our audience is and what's important to them and how we can convey those things that are important to them in our speech. We want our speeches to be accessible and understandable by our audience. You want the speech to be appropriate for your audience, appropriate for the situation. Knowing who your audience is, what their interests are, what their demographics are, what tone they might be expecting, these are all really important things to consider before even preparing your speech. Let me give you an example. I'm delivering this speech right now to you knowing that you are a college student. You're an adult, you are watching this video. I am delivering this information in a way that makes sense to you, that is accessible by you. If I was delivering this speech to other college professors, I might use more technical terms because I'm assuming that they also have studied communication and have all of this background knowledge already. If I was delivering this to first graders, I might talk like this. Communication is fun. I'm not going to do that to you because that's not the audience. Oh God, that was, yikes. That would be really weird given the audience, right? Does that make sense? If I were to deliver it like that to you right now, y'all would be cringing and pausing the video and would be like, I need to drop the class immediately right now. Because I know my audience, I'm not going to talk like that to you. I also know right now that as college students, and not only are you a student, but you are likely working, you have other obligations outside of school, that I am catering my message to that, making sure that it's not too overwhelming, not too overloaded with information. So this is what we mean by analyzing the audience. making our information suitable and catered to the specific audience we're speaking to. Once we've analyzed our audience, the next step is to select a topic. This is the step of the process that most people have a lot of anxiety about, but I'm going to tell you that this is the least important step. What I mean by it being the least important step is that you can deliver a speech on anything. You can look around your room and go, oh, here's an empty bag of coffee beans. I'm going to give a speech on this. It's that simple, because there's no such thing as a boring topic. We tend to get in our heads thinking that there must be a good topic out there somewhere, that I need to close my eyes and manifest a good topic. Like that's not going to happen. That's not realistic. So what are the ways to select a topic? One thing you'd want to do is consider what your interests are. I think this is the best route to go. Consider what your interests are. What are you passionate about? Oftentimes we do the audience analysis, we think of who our audience is, how we can best relate to them, and then we think, oh no, I need a topic that my classmates are going to think is cool. I need a topic that's not going to bore them. I need something that they want to hear about. When in reality, what we want to hear about is what you're passionate about, what you're interested in. So in step 2, when you're selecting a topic, you want to brainstorm things that you can talk about. Right now, I want you to think about what are those things that you can just talk about to someone forever. Like if you had a friend next to you and you can just ramble on, maybe you never get tired talking about Shrek. Maybe you just love talking about analyzing the Shrek films and Shrek lore. Okay, deliver a speech on that. Enlighten us. If that's the thing that you're passionate about, tell us. I happen to be passionate about coffee. If I wanted to, I can make my speech topic something about coffee. So we will talk more about selecting a speech topic in the future. Right now, I want to let you know that the least amount of time in your preparation should be on selecting a topic. Think about what is exciting to you, and I will work with you on forming that into a speech topic for this class. And to reiterate, there's no such thing as a bad speech topic. Step number 3 is to determine the speech purpose. Before you begin writing the speech, you want to think about what is the goal of your speech? What are you trying to accomplish? So let's say that I did select coffee as my speech topic. The next step is to think about what's my purpose. Am I informing the audience about different types of coffee? Am I trying to persuade them to drink more coffee? Do I want to persuade them to drink less coffee? If I decide that if my goal of my speech is to persuade my audience to drink a lot of coffee, and I spend my whole time just describing and informing my audience about coffee, I'm straying away from my purpose of my speech. So the reason why we do this is to keep us on track and to make sure that in the rest of our preparation, we are staying true to this goal. Step number 4 is composing a thesis statement. So if I ask you, what's your thesis? I'm asking you, what is the main point? What is the central idea of your speech? So in a single sentence, I should be able to tell you what it is that my speech is about. Let's say I want to write a speech about coffee. I looked around my room, I saw that empty bag of coffee beans, and I went, that's a good speech topic. Let me write a speech about coffee. The speech purpose, maybe I've decided that I want to inform my audience about coffee. That's the purpose, informing them about coffee. Now, when I've composed my thesis statement, I want to say specifically what it is that I'm doing with this speech. So my thesis statement might be something like, in my speech, I'm informing the audience about coffee. Specifically, I'm going to teach them different ways to brew coffee, including a mocha pot and a French press. That's my thesis statement. It's one sentence, there's a semicolon in there somewhere, but it's one statement, one phrase that encompasses what my speech is about. So the next steps are kind of interchangeable. It really depends on your process and what makes sense to you. So according to your book, the next step is to develop main points, and then after that to gather data and research material. Here's the thing, it depends entirely on where you are with your topic. There are 2 ways you can do this. You can start by developing your main points, which are the specific things about your topic that you want to discuss in your speech. So you can start with identifying what those are and then research them and gather data. Or you can know generally, I know I want to talk about this topic, but I don't know what about this topic I want to talk about. I haven't narrowed it down yet. I'm going to research it and gather data. And with that data, I'm going to categorize it into different sections. For instance, let's say I already know a lot about coffee. I know I want to talk about the difference between coffee that is fair trade and coffee that is not fair trade. That's my topic. Those are my main points. I'm going to research that. Or I'm going to start researching coffee and think, what are different things about coffee I want to talk about? I'm going to start looking at articles, looking at websites. What about coffee is interesting to me? What is jumping out to me? Where can I categorize this information? And when I find something that really makes sense to me as a main point, I'm going to form my speech around that data that I've collected. So let's say that I'm researching coffee and I find a lot of interesting information on different ways to brew coffee. I might then categorize that as my main points being about brewing with a French press and brewing coffee with a moka pot and using a Keurig. Those are my 3 main points. What are the differences between those? How can I inform my audience about those things? We're going to talk more about researching and good research habits when we get closer to our research assignments. But right now, you should know that part of writing a speech is gathering data. So my research or evidence for my speech, some of it's going to come from personal experience, such as my own coffee drinking habits, and other of it is going to come from outside sources. So experts on coffee, journal articles, newspaper articles, things that are credible sources. And we will talk more about that when we get to that lecture. So this is the part that I want to focus on today because this is what you're going to be doing for your next assignment. You want to arrange your speech into the 3 major parts of a speech. So you have your idea, you have your main points that you want to talk about, you have your research. Now you need to put them together in an order that makes sense. So a typical speech structure is an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. So first, I'm going to tell you that I'm about to tell you about this thing. Then I'm going to tell you about this thing. And finally, I'm going to remind you what I told you about the thing. That's essentially what a speech is. And the reason why we do this is because speaking is difficult when people can't go backwards or forwards, that we're giving them information and they have to listen to it as we deliver it. So by having an introduction and a body and a conclusion, we are organizing the information in a way that is easy for the audience to follow along. When we give them an introduction, we're mentally preparing them for what it is that we're about to say. That way it's not a surprise when we talk about it. In the body, we'll be talking more specifically about the things that we gave them a preview of. And in the conclusion, we're reminding them about the things that we told them in case they forgot, because our attention spans are not the best. So that's intro, body, conclusion. Once you've figured out how your intro, body, and conclusion is going to look, you're going to outline the speech. Generally, you're going to have 2 types of outlines. One outline would be your full sentence outline. This is where you list in full sentences what it is that you're talking about, all of your research. It's a lot of information, and it's more to organize all of your thoughts, but it's not necessarily something that you're going to be reading off of during your speech. Instead, you would also have a second outline called a keyword outline. These are things that you would have on note cards. So that way you can read that brief phrase on the note card and know what it is that you're going to say. The reason why you have these outlines is to keep yourself organized. In this class, I'm not expecting you to memorize everything. Nothing that you deliver will be memorized, but it should be well rehearsed. And part of being well rehearsed is having a solid outline and having really good keyword outlines that you can read off of, look at your note card, and know exactly what it is that you want to tell your audience. And that brings us to the final step, which is practicing. Practice, practice, practice. The best way to prepare your speech, to improve your speaking, to do well in this class, and to do well in any speaking assignment is to practice, is to rehearse. Sometimes we write our speech and we go, oh, I'll wing it. And then we go up there in front of the audience and we're like, yikes, I don't actually know what I'm saying. One of the good things about practicing is we become conversational. We become really comfortable with what it is that we're saying. Right now, when I'm delivering this lecture to you, is really conversational. It's like I'm right here talking to you, sort of. I've practiced, I've outlined what it is that I wanted to tell you, and I'm really comfortable talking about it because I'm really familiar with the information. Another benefit of rehearsing your speech out loud is sometimes when you write it out and you read it in your head, it sounds fine. But when you start to say it out loud, some of the words might sound awkward. Or you might notice, wait, that doesn't make sense. Maybe I should rearrange my main points. Maybe I need to restructure my outline. Maybe I need to reword something. And also, you want to practice the entire speech from beginning to end. A lot of the times, something that I used to do a lot that I learned the hard way that I needed to practice the entire speech is that I would practice the beginning of the speech and go, psh, I've got it, piece of cake. And then I'd actually deliver the speech. And once I got towards the end, I was like, oh, I don't know what I'm saying anymore. I totally did not practice this. This is like I'm seeing it for the first time. I'm shocked. We don't want that to happen. We want to be comfortable the entire way of the speech. Now we're going to do a very brief baby version of a speech. And it's also to prepare you to get used to recording yourself speaking in front of a camera and uploading that footage. So this is not graded, but it will count for participation. What you're going to do is record yourself giving a 30-second long speech about yourself. In the speech, you'll have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. The introduction and conclusion aren't going to be very technical. We will get more detailed about that for future speeches. But for this speech, you're going to talk about a topic that you should know pretty well. And the topic is you. For this speech, you're going to be telling us about a fictional character that you relate to and why or how you relate to this character. This can be a character from any form of fiction, such as books, movies, television, video games. You want to make sure that you're choosing a fictional character and not a real person. So for instance, if I were to say, the fictional character I relate to is Keanu Reeves, that wouldn't be correct because as mythical of a person he is, he's still a real person. Instead, I would want to say something like, the fictional character I relate to is John Wick. And then I would have a really fun time explaining how I relate to John Wick as a character. I really love my imaginary dog that I don't actually have. So your structure is to have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. So in your introduction, you're going to introduce yourself by name and tell us the name of the character that you relate to. In the body of the speech, you're going to tell us the reasons why, and then give us an example for each reason. Finally, you're going to conclude your speech by reminding us about who you are and what your character is, and having a sentence at the end that ends your speech. So let me give you an example. Hello everyone, my name is Professor Ivezai, and today I'm going to tell you about how I relate to the fictional character Bagheera from Disney's The Jungle Book. First off, Bagheera is a panther, and I can relate to this because I like to wear a lot of black almost all of the time, and pretty much every time I do my makeup, I like to put my eyeliner in a cat eye, which makes me relate to Bagheera on the feline level. Secondly, Bagheera is very serious and very focused on his tasks that he needs to accomplish and doesn't like when other people mess around. I can relate to this because I'm a total Virgo and I want people to be professional with me when they're working with me, and I get frustrated when people want to be silly when I'm trying to focus on my work. Finally, even though Bagheera can be pretty stoic, deep down he really cares about his friends. I can relate to this because even though people might think I'm standoffish at first, they'll soon find that I'm very warm and caring. So today I told you about how I relate to Bagheera, and hopefully you learned a little bit more about me. Thank you. Okay, so once you've recorded a video like that about a fictional character that you relate to, you're going to record yourself speaking and then upload that video to YouTube. Once you've done that, you're going to submit that link to Dropbox. Okay, so here's the thing. You're going to feel awkward doing this. Okay? It's going to feel weird. You're going to feel embarrassed. You're going to want to not upload it at all. But I'm here to tell you that we all feel like that. So if you think you're the only one who feels awkward about doing this, that is not true. Everyone feels awkward about doing this. So lecturing to you, fine. Totally fine. I can do that. Telling you about myself and how I relate to a fictional character, like that's a little different for me. That's not something I usually do. So if you feel awkward, that's okay. That's the thing that we're going to try to build on. The next lesson that we're going to be doing is focusing on speaking anxiety. And we all have some form of speaking anxiety in one way or another. So if you have anxiety about delivering the speech, that's okay. That's normal. You will get through it. As a reminder, this speech that you're recording is just to get you used to speaking in front of a camera, talking about a topic, and organizing it in an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. Remember that it does not have to be memorized. You can have an outline with you to read off of, but not read directly off of, to refer to, and then look back at the camera, like I did in my example. This is also to get you used to uploading your video footage to YouTube and then submitting the YouTube link to Dropbox. If you experience technical difficulties, now's the time to do it because this is not a graded assignment. So if you need to troubleshoot something, figure something out, email me with your issues that you have. This is your opportunity to do so. Okay, everyone, that just about covers everything for today's lesson. So we went over the origins of communication, we talked about the communication model, the ways you want to prepare for a speech, and an example of the speech that you will be delivering next. If you have any questions, please email me. You can also make appointments to meet with me on Zoom office hours if you would like to do so. And I know it's been a hectic time. You have updates all over the place. You have discussion boards for all your classes. So much going on. So I want you to know that I know what's going on and I understand that it is difficult. But I believe in you and I know you can do it. Okay, that's all I have for this video. I'll see you in the next one.